we have a long way to go. And even if we look at the law, for example, there are some laws that have changed for the transgender community, but for the rest of the community, no. People from the community still don't have the rights that citizens take for granted. No right to marry, right to inherit, right to adopt, right to have children through surrogacy, things that we don't even think of as rights. We still have the legal environment is very hostile for the LGBTQI community. So that's a lot of work to be done. Yeah, I think as I got older, one of the things that became very clear to me is that how, and especially when we look at COVID and everything, how is it that we only think of rights as human rights? What about the rest of the planet? What about the rest of the life forms on that planet? How can we only say that we are the only species who should have rights to a safe environment? A child who is trans, a child who is feminine, everyone makes fun of them, including their teachers. One of the kids told me, he said, when we go into the staff room, we've heard teachers discussing children and laughing. So yes, huge changes have to happen. And to me, a child taking their life, nothing could be worse.
Absolutely.
Hi, welcome to the Mohua Show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur, and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से.
So, hi, in today's podcast, we have with us Anjali Gopalan, an Indian human rights and animal rights activist, founder and executive director of the NAS Foundation Trust, an NGO dedicated to fight against the HIV/AIDS epidemic in India, mainly focused on women and children. Anjali has played a pivotal role in combating HIV/AIDS in India as well as decriminalizing homosexuality. In 2012, Anjali was named by Time magazine as one of the world's 100 most influential people for her pioneering work on HIV/AIDS and LGBT rights in India. She's also the recipient of countless awards in her groundbreaking work. In March 2007, Anjali was honored as a Woman Achiever by India's Ministry of Women and Child Development. On 25th of October 2013, Anjali was also given the highest award from France, the pronunciation of which is going to be extremely difficult for me. And welcome, Anjali, to tell us a little bit about that award and your entire reason to spearhead and the cause for sexual wellness, HIV positive children, young adults, along with the advocacy for LGBT community through NAS Foundation. Welcome. It is an absolute honor, Anjali, for me to have you here today with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Um, okay, now where do I start? You had asked one question, right?
I
Yeah,
would
so
like you
that
to
question,
pronounce.
I know. Listen, I'm equally bad at that. But it's the Legion d'Honneur. So it's the highest civil award of the French government, which I was very honored to get. And yeah, so yeah, what was your next question? It was about.
The next
Uh,
question was that what was that catalyst? What was that thing in your life that, if you were to recall in this conversation, that made you take up this entire cause, towards sexual wellness, caring for HIV positive children? They're not easy. This is not easy work to do, young adults, along with advocacy for LGBTQ community. Even today, people are uncomfortable having these conversations and then taking it through with NAS Foundation. So tell us your core mission in driving this work and the catalyst in your life, Anjali.
so it's interesting, I'd never thought. My degree was in journalism, and then I did go to the US. And as part of my master's requirements, I had to work with a community based organization. So I started my work in Brooklyn with a community based organization that was working with undocumented migrant labor from Haiti and Latin America. And it was, and already this was in the late 80s. And HIV had just become a major issue. And if you remember at that time, they, you know, they were not taking blood from Haitians or from gay people. It was highly stigmatized. It was a very stigmatized disease, and hospitals were not taking care of people who were falling sick. There were no drugs. People were just dying left, right, and center. And that's how I kind of got exposed to the issue of HIV. And uh, and since I had a lot of gay friends, I suddenly found that I was losing friends left, right, and center. People were dying. And that's how I kind of got into this HIV work, because my boss actually said, she said, look, you have the capacity to train and to counsel. So you must this is something you must do. And that's how I kind of got into it. And but I think what really cemented the whole thing was for me was when there was this friend of mine who was of Indian descent but from Guyana. His family got to know two things together, that he was HIV positive and he was gay. Both things that were hidden from them, and they actually threw him out. And I ended up taking care of him. And I think once HIV has this way of kind of, taking you in its grip, and once you start working with it on issues related to HIV, it's very difficult to get out of it. At least that's my experience. Because I think it makes you look at yourself, it makes you look at your values, but also it really makes you look at rights from a very different kind of perspective. And that's how the work started. And then after 10 years, when I came back to India, it made sense that I would continue doing what I was doing because it was becoming an issue in India. And I felt it was critical for me to continue doing that. And then my friends here said, listen, you've been working with the community there, why aren't you doing it here? And that's how it kind of started. And of course, the rest is history. Now it's going to be 30 years of NAS today. I can't believe it because I still feel I've just come back. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
It is incredible, Anjali. Anjali, you know what? I have to take a cue from what you said just now. Rights from a different perspective. I think it'll be wonderful for our listeners and also for me to understand what do you mean by that. In the context of AIDS, in the context of HIV. I mean, let's face it. Even today, HIV, the word itself brings in fear. There is stigma. How much ever, I mean, people do say that one can lead a good life with, medication, and you can lead a normal life, but there is a stigma attached to it. So tell me about your concept of what do you mean by right from a different perspective.
So, so I think what HIV does is it actually brings to the fore issues of discrimination, caste, class, things that I think in many ways, if you're from a certain class in this country, you're fairly protected. You're not exposed to these issues so much, right? And HIV makes you look at it. It makes you look at how I think for me one of the biggest learnings has been my understanding today of it's so critical to make especially children learn how to respect the other, how to not look down on people who may seem to be different, how not to judge someone, right? HIV makes you do all of this. It also makes you look at laws. It makes you look at the fact that as a society, it is so easy for us to discriminate as a people because we are based on caste and class lines. In this country, it's incredible that, and this doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, right? You have Christians and Muslims also who belong to certain castes. And
Absolutely.
these religions were Sikhism. These religions came about to fight caste, and they themselves have not been able to get out. So yes, it makes you look at rights from such a different perspective, right? It's not just about law; it's about so many other things. Also, how does one fight for access? How does one make sure in a country like ours that people get the medicines that they should rightfully have? Because one of the things, as you said, HIV is still, of course, there is that stigma. But let me tell you, when someone comes to me and says they have HIV, today with the kind of medications that are available, People are living really long, healthy, absolutely fulfilled lives. There's no reason for them to be worried about it. As a matter of fact, when someone comes and says they have cancer, my heart sinks to my toes. But HIV, no. Today, we run a home for children living with HIV. They were born with the virus, right? My oldest kid today is 28, and this is a child who was born with HIV, right? So there is a lot of hope. We have children today who are born um, uh, to mothers who are HIV positive, and to parents who are HIV positive, or mothers who are HIV positive, and they're not infected. This is thanks to the kind of drugs that are available and medications that are available today. So I think we've come a long way. However, the biggest issue today is the discrimination that people living with HIV still face. People
They
are
do.
still scared, to be open. They can't. They have to hide the fact that they are living with HIV, right? So it's an issue still.
Yeah. And that's going to take a very long time, I think, Anjali.
I think one of the reasons why this is so is because it is so linked to sex.
Yes, absolutely.
And therefore the moral
The
connotations,
moral
and
connotation.
people saying things like, oh, they most probably deserve it because they have not they are not moral. They've gone out of their marriage, or they sleep with sex workers, or they sleep with other men. People will have all kinds of reasons for blaming. No one looks at their own behaviors. No one looks at what they themselves are or should be looking at. But it's so easy to point a finger at someone else, right? And that's the problem with HIV, because it is so linked to the sexual route of transmission, and therefore the moral connotations.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your logo at NAS. It's extremely unique. So what message does it convey?
We were thinking about inclusiveness. We were thinking about welcoming everyone into our hearts. I'm a great believer in looking at everything through the lens of love, because I think that's so critical for all of us, right? Because if you learn to love, if you learn to give, you learn to accept. And I think it's very, very important. So the logo kind of emerged out of that.
So can you just share some of the keystone, the milestones and the achievements, for that NAS Foundation has been able to accomplish in its journey, and also about the fact that you were listed in Time Magazine 100 most influential people in the world.
I think NAS in many ways reflects the trajectory of the evolution of HIV in this country. I think some of our milestones definitely has been challenging Section 377, which is an anti-sodomy law, which has been used by especially immensely corrupt police force that we have to hassle gay people. So reading down that law, getting it read down, was and has been a major milestone for us. I think setting up the home for children, which, by the way, for someone who is not particularly, I've never wanted kids, much to my mother's disappointment. I never wanted to have kids, and when this child, and I basically hadn't thought of kids, and then this child gets left at our office, and I'm like, oh, we have to do something. And it was interesting. My mom actually said, she said, just retribution. You never wanted kids, and now look what's happening, right? So I think setting up the care home, because the care home was took care of children who no one else wanted to touch. So these were children born with HIV, had lost both parents, and had no community support. So they were actually children who would not have survived. So for me, setting up that home again had to do with rights, because I believe it is the right of every child to get the best possible, that the I think all children should have that, and it breaks my heart that we still haven't been able to break that circle of poverty in our country. Uh, and I still see children suffer a lot. And I, so that is a very sad thing to have to live with. But with these children, so when we set up the care home, actually, I was told, oh, there are thousands of children who need care, and you're taking care of 30. And what is the point? And I'm like, that is the point. At least these 30, okay, I can't take care of the thousands, but these 30 I can guarantee for the rest of their lives. We are there for them. This is their home. So, which is why when people kind of get, how can we do something? I always tell them, whatever, just reach out, touch that one life. It doesn't matter. It could be human, it could be animal, I don't care. But please reach out and touch that one life. You get so much more back than what you give anyway. So I think the care home was a major milestone. We also set up the first HIV clinic in the city. We set up the first wards when hospitals, there were no medicines available. So we had many people from all over the country come because they were just in such a bad condition. So we actually set up like two wards and took care of many people. So many got well and went back, some did not. And subsequently, once the ARVs were available, we closed them down. So these have been, um, things that have kept us going. And now there's such a change in the way we're even looking at how to prevent HIV from happening. For example, the kind of discrimination that the LGBTQI community faces, working on issues of fighting the discrimination that people living with HIV face. Um, so I think that's going to be an ongoing. Hopefully, it is in our DNA, and that's the way it's going to be. Because in this country, preventing the infection has taken a back seat now because of the medications, and this is true all over the world. Actually, not only in this country. But I feel I'm still seeing younger people infected. I'm seeing a lot of young gay boys come in infected, which is criminal. We're seeing lesser children being born with the virus, though, thanks to the medications that are available. So we have a long way to go. And even if we look at the law, for example, there are some laws that have changed for the transgender community, but for the rest of the community, no. People from the community still don't have the rights that citizens take for granted. No right to marry, right to inherit, right to adopt, right to have children through surrogacy, things that we don't even think of as rights. We still have the legal environment is very hostile for the LGBTQI community. So that's a lot of work to be done. So the other major milestone would be the setting up of the LGBTQI center in NAS. In our basement, we restructured it for as a drop-in space, as a community space. So, and all our services now for the community emanate from there. But it's a wonderful place for people to come to hang out, to read, to watch films, to come for their support group meetings. There's legal, medical interventions. It's a lot happening. So that was the most recent milestone. I think. So yeah, lots. There's always lots to do.
Yeah, so Anjali, you'd be the right person to actually tell us about this entire evolving landscape, that we are seeing today in India, where topics of sexual wellness is coming up, especially thanks for, Instagram, and thank you for a whole lot of these social media where I think a lot of people do speak very, they speak about social media very badly, but I think if hashtag Me Too had not happened, many, men would have gotten away with the kind of abuse that has been happening for so long. So obviously, there's a lot of conversation on LGBTQ, but I just feel that lesbian representation is still very, very less, in this entire space.
Zero,
And
zero.
as a woman, I think that it bothers me that because what happens is that if there's a lesbian couple that decides to go out, most people when they look at them, they think that if she has sex with a man, her
Yeah,
entire, she's going to turn into a straight person. And so they have all these thought processes that goes on, and of course this is not easy, like I said, to change. So let me hear from your perspective, what is the kind of changes that you have seen, Anjali?
Look, from now I'm talking of a span of, say, the last 30 years. Of course, I've seen changes, right? When we started our work and today, um, huge changes. However, I think women's sexuality is not something that is still spoken about, is acknowledged, is considered to be something that is good to be open about. And of course, it's a reflection of our patriarchal society. First of all, nothing challenges patriarchy more than someone who is gay. However, if you're a woman and you say, and if you're a lesbian, that is the ultimate challenge to patriarchy, because what are you saying? That I, as a woman, want to spend the rest of my life with another woman. I don't need a man, or I don't want a man. So they have to be at the bottom end of the totem pole. Because can you imagine how what it must be doing to men who, besides thinking of porn when they think of lesbians, because in every porn film it's mandatory to have that lesbian scene. Uh, they're not thinking of them as someone who are capable of loving, caring, being in a relationship, being able to set up a home, being doing all those good things that supposedly straight folks do. So nothing challenges patriarchy more than a woman who says she's a lesbian. So I think it's going to be a hard one for them. It's very difficult for women because, of course, it's really difficult. Who's teaching you anything to begin with? You know, we're still hesitant about talking about our periods and pads and all of those things. We should have access to vaccines which are going to protect us from things like cervical cancer. We don't talk about it. So forget about the access. We're not even talking about something that is so preventable. So yes, there's an issue with women and sexuality. Huge issue.
Yes, and and so many of these things gets passed on, Anjali, that even till now, I've had at home. I generally don't dry my undergarments in the where all the other clothes are. It's always in my bathroom, and I haven't been able to do it because this is something that my mom said that it should not be within the view of the next house where there are men. And these are things that I need to also challenge myself on a regular basis as I grow up. But invariably I find myself washing my undergarments at night.
Our homework for today. Try and hang your panties out.
Yeah, Anjali, I think I will start doing that, putting my knickers outside, for it to
It's,
sit a bit of the sun.
but look how deep-seated it is, right? I mean,
Yes,
for
it is.
even for a woman to, I do a lot of workshops with men and women on sexuality, and it's unbelievable because uh, we just don't know our bodies.
No.
So many women tell me they've never had an orgasm.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. I mean, and you wonder, how does one even start? Where does one start? Right? And how do you get women to be able to talk about what gives them pleasure? It can't happen till they themselves know their bodies. But no one is teaching our young any of this, right? It's an issue. And it's not like men know much better. Because I do a lot of work with men, they also constantly will ask me questions like, my wife doesn't seem happy. What can I do? Right? So, I mean, one should not blame, it's not a question of blaming either. But we have failed as teachers, as older people who should have been able to talk to our younger ones and help them through this process. We've never done it. We
I think there's
still,
a huge taboo at home to talk about it. It's always the birds and the bees that we spoke about in the initial days. And
No, but that's
and
true. Yeah, I remember I myself used to think, oh God, if you run around, because that's what happened in Hindi movies, right? You ran around a tree and then got pregnant. So I had this vision of always running around a tree and getting pregnant. So yeah, of course, that's how it happens, right? That's what we grow up on. So that's our problem.
two
We have
flowers that
problems.
get together for a kiss, you know.
Now at least
Yes,
there's
of
some amount of, yeah, yeah.
yes. Yes. So there are, I'm sure a lot of pressing issues and barriers that hinder progress, towards LGBTQ plus rights and equality, in India. And for me, I think, of course, there is a huge recognition for transgenders in India, but we still haven't yet started the toilets. And that really bothers me because it is just such a first, part of the entire journey for them once they go into a place of work and they're accepted there. Which toilet are they going to go into? So there are a lot of barriers
No, we
even
have a
now.
long way to go. But let me tell you, for example, in your city, no, was it in Kochi or Bangalore? I can't remember. One of the two cities. The metro did hire, I think it was Kochi. The metro did hire some transgenders, seven or eight. They left. Why did they leave? They couldn't get accommodation near their workplace. And some of them said that even they had a hard time with other riders in the train. So, you see, unless in society we start working with general communities to bring about a change in attitudes, things are not going to change. One is the law, sure. And but on the flip side of that is if we don't work with general communities, change cannot happen. And what do I mean by that? Right from something very basic, like ensuring that LGBTQI issues are a part of the curriculums that train teachers, that train bureaucrats, that train doctors. Without that, change is not going to happen. And we are failing at that.
Yeah, with doctors, actually, there is no syllabus on how to go about the surgery. So, because the same,
Correct.
yes. So that's why there is a lot of issues here because, a lot of surgeries that transgenders need to go through, the trans people.
Watched up
And the
surgeries.
botched up surgeries that they go through, and it is it's heart wrenching when you hear their stories. And so yeah, it is I mean, it's so deep, it is so
It's a
deep, and
long way to go.
very, very
Long
long
way.
way to go,
Yeah, yeah.
extremely long way to go.
But
So now,
but but but
yeah.
let me just tell you, and this is really important because people need to know this, is there are some judgments which have really um, should be used to protect, for example, the intersex community. We don't even talk about the intersex community because, first of all, in our minds, we are not very clear of the difference between trans and hijras and intersex, right? Now, invariably we hear stories, and we all have heard these stories that when an intersex child is born, hijras come and take them away. That's not true. Actually, what happens usually is the parents start and with the doctor decide whether the child is more female or male, and they'll start doing surgeries from the time the child is 3 or 4, and it carries on till they're about 7, 8, multiple surgeries. And with the preference of male child in this country, you can imagine that most children are made into boys. Luckily, the Madras High Court, a couple of years ago, I want to say, gave us a very good judgment where they said no surgeries, unless it was a life threatening issue, should be done on children till they are 18. After 18, they can decide what surgery they want to go through. Now, this is a major breakthrough, and we should really get people to understand that if they have an intersex child, they should not be doing surgeries on that child till the child turns 18. That's going to make a huge difference in the life of the transgender child. Sorry, of that intersex child. So, some things are beginning to happen. The NALSA judgment has made some difference in the lives of trans people. The rest of the community, unfortunately, is still struggling.
So let's just talk a little bit about India's recent, Supreme Court refusal to legalize same-sex marriage, and saying that it's up to the Parliament to decide, whether it should expand marriage laws to same-sex unions. So I would love your take on that because it's really been a huge heated topic among in the community, and
Well, I wish the Supreme Court had taken a stand for marriage not because I think I'm not I'm not a great proponent of the institution of marriage. Um, but I think that was an opportunity lost. I can't see Parliament bringing about any major change. It's really difficult. Yeah, how often what discussions happen in Parliament? My understanding from what I've seen, it just seems not much happens. However, I wish the courts could have taken a stand. It would have made a difference because for those who want to get married, it's very important that they have that right. First of all, on what basis are we denying a right that every citizen of this country has? As a matter of fact, in this country, if you don't get married, it's an issue. So now here are folks saying, please allow us to get married, and you say, sorry, you can't get married. Why? Are they not capable of loving, creating a home? And the argument that what will happen to children who are with people of same-sex couples? What will happen? Please go sit in family court for 5 minutes. All the cases that come there are heterosexual couples. What they do to each other and to the child, are they creating a very loving, wonderful home for the child? It's not about whether you're straight or gay. And it is about people being able to create a safe and loving environment for a child. Just because you're straight, you don't automatically do that. So, and just because you're gay doesn't mean you cannot. So to me, it was very sad that we lost that opportunity because now I think it set us back by many steps. I don't see this happening very, at least, I don't know, maybe something will surprise us. We could never say never. But right now, it doesn't look like, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is extremely unfortunate because there are many, many children who are just left, in dustbins, and they are just left to die, with dogs coming and, eating on their flesh. And this is a regular affair in India. And, so at least adoption, I think, would have been a good way.
As a single person below a certain age, you can still adopt. However, if you're a same sex couple, you can't. It's really, adoption laws, everything needs to change.
Yes, yes, I agree. So, you've been on the forefront of the case, for Article 377, and the journey, I'm sure, must have been a very arduous one. It must not have been easy. So, do share with our listeners the key accomplishments and, what is the road ahead looking like for you now when we know that the Supreme Court has refused to legalize same sex marriage, but there is a recognition, with Article 377. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Article 377 is a very interesting article. Nowhere does it use the word homosexual. Actually, what it says is that what it said was that if you have carnal intercourse against the order of nature, you can be prosecuted. The courts hadn't defined what is carnal intercourse. They haven't defined what is against the order of nature. Extremely it's Judeo-Christian terminology, right? Um, so if you think about it, against the order of nature is having sex in any other way besides penile vaginal sex. So that means most people in this country are in violation of that law. How many of us have sex only to procreate? Hopefully, having sex also for pleasure, right? And there goes our family planning program, which anyway seems to be quite non functional right now. But I'm just saying, just look at it. It's crazy. But this was used to harass gay people by our wonderful corrupt police system. So, i- however, this law also is a law that used to protect sexual abuse of animals, which, by the way, exists in this country like nobody's business. Something we don't talk about at all. And all kinds of animals, goats and donkeys and dogs, though, of course. This law, so what we said was, at that time, there was no law against child sexual abuse either. POXO happened fairly recently. So we asked for a reading of down of the law, saying that please remove consenting adults from the purview of this law. And that's exactly what the Delhi High Court agreed on. And this was the reason why we asked for a reading down of that law and not for it to be removed from the statutes. Unfortunately, it has now been removed from the statutes under the new, whatever that Samhita is. But so I'm thinking now of going back to the courts and saying you have to look at uh, two things. I really want to start, that's my next step forward, right? Two things I really feel before I die, I want to say. One is we have to protect animals from sexual abuse. The second is that we have to ensure that men who get raped also have recourse to law. Right now, our laws are not gender neutral. So if a man under Section 377, there was the opportunity for that to happen. But now, if a man gets raped by another man, it's not. He has no recourse. So these are the two things I know. It is sometimes you wonder whether you're living in the 21st century or not, right? And knowing all this, we still are closing our eyes. What is wrong with us as a culture? What is wrong with us as a people?
Anjali, I'd really like you to talk a little bit about this entire. It's so dark, about sexual abuse of animals, because animals don't even have a voice. They don't even know. They can't even tell anyone for the pain, and
Children and animals.
yeah, children and
Uh,
animals. So, have you done any work in this field, and you know, how is it to confront this absolutely bizarre, dystopian, dark reality, of sexual abuse of animals? How can one seek justice, for the animal victim of rape under Section 377?
and part of my work, this is also the evolution of my own understanding of rights. See, I think as I got older, one of the things that became very clear to me is that how, and especially when we look at COVID and everything, how is it that we only think of rights as human rights? What about the rest of the planet? What about the rest of the life forms on that planet? How can we only say that we are the only species who should have rights to a safe environment? So my own understanding of rights has evolved, and I look at it more as a continuum. I don't think it can be a question anymore for me of once a set of rights which are for me versus another. It can't be us versus them. And COVID has really made this very clear for all of us. Given how we're living, given what we're doing to animals, we really have to take a step back and rethink of how we are treating the environment and animals. So for me, it's the same way I look at rights for human beings, I look at as rights for animals. You put them at the center of that intervention. And there is no reason that you won't see the reason for them also to have those rights. What are those rights? To live a life without fear is one. So I, I, I can't, I don't understand why as human beings we are not able to understand this. It doesn't make sense. It's the voiceless who are constantly suffering. It's like Gandhiji said, the way you treat your uh, animals. He was talking about a culture that the way you treat animals is a reflection of what you are as a culture. So it's unbelievable. It doesn't make sense. The pain, the violence. Um, we're doing it with our children. We're doing it with our animals. We're doing it with our women. What is where have what have we lost? Where have we lost it? Every day I wake up and I'm a newspaper reader. I just every on the first page of every newspaper it's about this rape and that. It's just crazy. It doesn't make sense anymore, right? What are we surrounded by? It's really sad.
So, Anjali, you also know that it is very difficult for youngsters. Once they identify themselves, as LGBTQ, and I've had on my podcast a young, boy who committed suicide at the age of 18 in, out of Ghaziabad, and his mother came onto the podcast because he was being bullied in school, and his pants were pulled down inside the toilet, and so they go through a lot, because they obviously feel that it's wrong. So, what would be, because you work with also children who have, who come into you, and younger people who seek your support. So, what would you like to tell, because podcast is obviously a very, very young listener base, and what would be your words to them if they are going through this journey themselves?
You know, what I would tell them cannot be in isolation. One is they have to be able to first identify someone within their network, within their family, because all of them are living in families, who will listen to what they have to say and protect them. That's the second is the strength to be able to withstand that kind of bullying, which is not easy. After all, this child who committed suicide in Ghaziabad, the mother had accepted him for who he was. She did not have an issue with it, right? The problem was the school. And this is the problem in most situations because trans children are so visible, or the more feminine children are so visible, they get horrendously bullied. So our laws against bullying have to really be strengthened. That's one. Secondly, I find that trans children and the more effeminate gay children are the ones who get sexually abused in schools. I am saying sexually abused. I am not just saying bullying. So most children I know have been when they go are scared to go to the toilet in schools because that's where it happens. And the abuse happens usually from their peers or senior boys. So somehow the system has to protect them. So it can't be just telling them what to do. It is the environment has to change. And unless you do not protect children, this will continue happening. And I tell trans children, look, committing suicide, okay, that's the end of you. But you're not going to be there to enjoy life as it should be and it can be. So children must have access to counseling which is non-judgmental. Schools are extremely judgmental. Not all schools, but most. A child who is trans, a child who is feminine, everyone makes fun of them, including their teachers.
Yes.
One of the kids told me, he said, when we go into the staff room, we've heard teachers discussing children and laughing. So, yes, huge changes have to happen. And to me, a child taking their life, nothing could be worse.
Absolutely. So, Anjali, we are at the last step of our podcast and we've got a few rapid fire questions. There'll be quick answers from you. So, what is your favorite achievement at NAS that brings you the most pride?
Section 37, reading down of Section 37.
One word to describe the impact of challenging Section 377.
One word. It would be acceptance.
Most memorable success story from your LGBTQIA plus support initiative.
I have many memorable stories, especially with the change of attitudes in parents who I counsel.
A quick tip for organizations wanting to use sport for social change.
Do it because it's quite incredible the change that sport can bring about.
Biggest obstacle in advocating for health, gender, and rights.
Society and the laws.
Favorite sport to watch or play?
Favorite sport for me, it's equestrian.
A NAS key focus for expanding impact in the next 5 years.
It has to be looking at bringing about these changes in law that I was speaking about.
Best piece of advice for economically marginalized youth?
Making sure that you are able to overcome those obstacles is in your hands. You can do it.
Favorite memory from a session with community-based organization?
Favorite story was when one child, I had finished doing a session on sexuality with these bunch of kids who were working in a hotel in Kamatipura, which is a red light district in Bombay. And when I was leaving, I said, "So, kaise laga?" So this kid, and I still, his face is in front of my eyes. He said, "पता है दीदी, जब आप पहले आपने बोला ना, मुझे लगा आप मुझे बहुत खराब लगा और मैंने सोचा कि आप इतने कैसे गंदी गंदी बातें कर रहे हैं." We were talking about masturbation and non-penetrative sex and all of that. And then फिर मुझे लगा जब आप ही इतने बेशर्म हो, मैं शर्म क्यों कर रहा हूँ? So I said, this is the best compliment I've ever got. Is being called in this context. So yeah, that was a great, great one. What a
Oh
compliment.
God, thank you so much, Anjali. You are a firebrand, an absolute cracker of a woman. It has been an honor to have you with me. And I look forward to meeting you personally in Delhi.
Yes,
And
I'm
thank
quite
you.
looking forward to it.
Absolute honor. I look up to you, Anjali. And
Thank you.
women like you are the torch bearers for change.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk imandari se.